Hi everyone, my name is Vince, and today we're hosting Nuno from Dig In for another episode of People Behind Tech here in Portugal. So Nuno, thanks for joining us here today in Marbella. Appreciate your time. So I know you've had a very interesting background, especially what you majored in university. So please tell the audience who you are and what you're doing here in Lisbon.
Thank you for the invite. My name is Nuno. I'm the founder and CEO of Dig In. And to start with this part from my background, even though I'm now participating in the startup space, especially in the tech ecosystem, yes. I've actually majored with a translation degree in university.
Interesting.
And as that was not enough, I also did a master's after on text editing and proofreading, because I really wanted to focus on doing work alone, not in a team, and just getting it done that way.
Okay, so I think that's very unconventional to go from that to a data startup. So talk us through the journey here. What's the origin story? Let's dig right into Dig In, no pun intended.
I think that the most interesting part is that I always believed, even when I was studying and when I was in school, I always believed that it was hard to become an entrepreneur. I always saw the examples as very old and gray people that were actually doing business. So I thought, like, this is not really very attractive. So even though I wanted to do something, I would have to study a lot, I would have to prepare a lot, I would have to have all of the safeguards before doing something. And I think that was exactly how my journey started. Even when I was trying to launch my own startup in the food space, I had to make sure that I knew everything, that I did all of the investigation, that I have all of the courses and small workshops to feel that presence was there. And I think that one of the things that happened over time was being comfortable with not knowing, launching, doing, and mastering the effect of actually not knowing what's happening in the next day.
Right, a tech entrepreneur needs to be comfortable with ambiguity, right?
Exactly. I remember there are some very interesting chapters in my life, and in one of them, and once I joined the startup ecosystem here in Portugal, it was when I first joined Zomato. Zomato was launching here back in 2014, and I was collecting data in the beginning, and that's how the data play also comes into place.
So for our audience who might not be familiar with Zomato, Zomato was an Indian company that was active here in Portugal.
Exactly. It was started in 2008 in India as a restaurant discovery marketplace. It scaled to several different international markets, and Portugal was one of them. I joined in the very beginning of the launch here in Portugal. And it was very interesting because my first job was actually to knock at restaurants' door and collect data, like essentially getting the menus, getting the photos, making sure that all the different data points that were visible in the restaurant or invisible in the restaurant were collected. So from then onwards, like obviously the business model was different, was essentially making sure that the restaurants could get enough visibility on the platform. But every time that I was looking into what was happening, I was feeling that there was a different story that could be told if we were looking into the data that was being provided.
Okay, tell us a bit more. What do you mean there?
So essentially the restaurant ecosystem, not only in Portugal, but in most of Europe and in most countries, it's highly fragmented. Just to have a notion, you have around 63,000 restaurants in Portugal. But if you ask any organization, any institution, or even the government about how many actual eateries do you have in Portugal, most of them won't know the number. It can range from 30 to 100. They really don't know. And there's a beauty in collecting all of those pieces, of all of those different pieces in a segment and industry that is so fragmented. And when you start putting all of that pieces and that chaos into something, it kind of resembles a work of art. And that's exactly what we've been specializing on.
Okay, so perhaps tell us a little bit more about how Zomato and Dig In became, I guess, related or unrelated? It's a spin out, or?
It's also an interesting story, not one that is very common. So from 2014 to 2020, so beginning of COVID, everything went in a very good trajectory. The number of users, the users, and also the restaurant ecosystem was also getting more digital day by day. So in 2014, saying that people would book, find a restaurant using a smartphone was something that was a bit dodgy.
Right.
You could tell this to restaurants, but most audience would say, no, I still like the old way of I'll tell someone and that person will discover. But throughout the years, people became more acquainted with that way of working. And just before COVID, there was already a decent traction. In COVID, as you can imagine, a restaurant discovery platform that takes you out to discover amazing places completely loses the purpose.
Had to evolve.
Exactly. And the way we were evolving was essentially, if we can provide all of this experience that we were providing before, what data do we have? How can we help brands, groups, chains, hotels make better decisions, more informed decisions based on the data that we have already collected? So just with what we have, we can already help them make smarter choices in terms of what they can adapt, how they can change, and how they can evolve. And luckily, that period, which was not amazing in all other senses, it kind of created an opportunity for us to spin out some of the ideas and say, okay, this data play that we have is actually pretty interesting and we can do something very relevant with them. When Zomato, at the end of 2020, Zomato decided to become just a delivery company and only based in India. So this means that all of the international markets were at that point also closed with that focus. And here we were a bit more resilient and we said, no, we are not closing. We are actually repurposing everything that was done, but with this focus on the data approach.
Interesting. So obviously the pandemic was a accelerant for digitalization, not just Portugal, but in the world all over. And you saw a nugget of gold there in what was in Zomato to bring out and start.
Exactly. So it was not the most obvious thing, but it was the thing that was already fueling most of the operations. It was just not being used on that sense of enriching the restaurants with the information. We were doing the marketplace connection between users and restaurants, but actually the information could help restaurants open new places, discover the right pricing on the menu, and even health institutions to understand what people are actually eating beyond the random service that they have and really going a layer deeper.
Very interesting. So is Digin still offering the reservation system in the meantime also as a Trojan horse, so to speak? I'm collecting data, and that data is actually going to be, at least now or in the near future, the main product that Digin will sell back to enterprises or restaurants for data and data-led insights.
So it all started with the Zomato platform. Without the Zomato platform and that beginning and that management buyout, it wouldn't have happened. So most of the trials and the experiments that we did was based on that legacy project that we have. And then we said, okay, we already have enough information here, so we can start now combining everything that is on the ecosystem. So you can go to the deepest places in the web to make sure that all of the digital information, all of the small pieces of information that are fragmented from social networks to other platforms that before were our competitors and right now they are a source of information. So basically every month you make sure that you gather all of this information, you make sense of it, and then you can export to brands. So previous competitors are now facilitators of our own work.
Wow. So where is Digin today? Like, how many restaurants are you covering? What are the important metrics that you're looking at?
So right now we are present in Portugal, Spain, and Germany. We went from the 63,000 restaurants that are present in Portugal, and which is the total number of restaurants present here in Portugal. And we also scaled to first Madrid, then Barcelona and Berlin as our test cities to make sure that it was a promise that we could deliver not only in our setting, but also abroad.
Congratulations.
Thank you. For Portugal, we already had some legacy, so it would always happen that people would say, you have that traction because there's a legacy. In Spain, since we didn't have any strings attached, it was an operation starting fresh So that was, we already removed that element. And then Germany also introduced the layer of a different language and a very different culture from the one that we have in Spain. So I think that those were the two-step validation that we needed to make sure that this is now scalable really to the place there we want to scale.
Interesting. Interesting times ahead. I want to go back to what you mentioned at the start, and how previously there was a very fixed traditional image of what an entrepreneur is, at least in Portugal. How have you seen that change or evolve over the years? And any advice that you have as a founder, leveraging your background in an unconventional degree, so to speak, for business in linguistics and translations, how has it helped you? How has being unconventional helped you to be the founder you are today?
That's a very interesting question. I would say that to reply to the first point, I would say that it completely changed. If we just compare 2014 and 10 years later what we have, or 11 years later with what we have today, I would say that before, most of the roads were not covered. So if you were trying to see an example of a management buyout, of a company really raising funds, of really scaling from Portugal into other locations, you would have very small and limited examples. You could always say like, yeah, but I don't have that profile, so I can't do it. Yeah, but I don't have that access or that web of knowledge, or that everything that you would see, you would basically see, it's not a fit for me. Since 2014, the ecosystem as a whole, like from public initiative to private initiative, really started building up to create an ecosystem where you have incubators, where you have acceleration programs, where you can see examples of companies really making it and scaling. So right now, if you just land in Portugal, or if you just land specifically in Lisbon, and in 1 week you want to have 10 relevant conversations with people who really made it, you can probably have those 10 conversations in a week. And that was just the amount of...
It's a melting pot of ideas and energy
available now, and you have plenty of paths to cover. Like if you're into AI, if you're into data, you can really map, and that's one of the good things of Portugal also being a small country in terms of land. It's that thing, a week is enough for you to cover a lot of contacts, a lot of north to south connections, and really having a good grasp and a good understanding of the ecosystem.
Amazing. Could you give our audiences perhaps a bit of a example or flavor into the types of support you've received, specifically being in Lisbon, for example, government funding or incubation programs like the ones here in Built Up Labs that's kindly hosting our interview here today. How has being here helped you specifically?
So I would say that there were a lot of things on our road that were very unconventional.
Yeah.
So we needed some structure, and the network of incubators, obviously specifically Built Up Labs, but also the network of incubators that exist in the country, allows you, not only if you are in Lisbon, but also in other places in Portugal, to really have some structure to what you have ahead. As a founder, you always want to be going straight forward and breaking walls and discovering new things, but there always comes a point where you need like some mentorship, some guidance, and it's not only the informal one. Sometimes you need a formal setting for that to happen. So that was something that was available to us, and that completely changed the way that we work now. I can say that we are more structured now because that was available. So from the private sector, this network of incubators is extremely valuable. I think that the other thing is that there are so many events, since the city is, and Lisbon specifically, it also happens in Porto. The cities are so much living all of the tech ecosystem and the entrepreneurship ecosystem, that the number of events, if you go into Eventbrite or any other page, and if you check the amount of events, the relevance of those events, the key stakeholders that you have speaking at those events, it's just amazing. And most of them are free. So again, in a week, if you just schedule and if you just note them down, there's a lot of insights that you can gather. And I think that a really good thing that happens here is that people are proud of sharing their knowledge. Like that's something that they do in a very humble way most of the times, in terms of sharing their knowledge and putting it together to inspire others.
Speaking about share but not one's knowledge. I've heard that you're also acting as a mentor to a lot of the younger startups. What can you say about the type of entrepreneurs that you're seeing recently in Lisbon? How are they different? How do they stand out perhaps from other ecosystems that you might have had a chance to experience so far?
It's a completely different wave of people coming from the ecosystem now. The type of connections that they have from the beginning. You now have people on their 20s, early 20s, doing things that you can only imagine doing in the beginning of your 40s. So the amount of knowledge that they have, the capacity to readapt, to pivot 3-4 times, most of the more senior folks would kind of resist a bit to do some of those operations. And what you find is that they are very much prepared because they have this network of incubators, of knowledge, of events, where they can really take all of this information to good use. I think then it's a matter of, do you take advantage of it or do you shy away from it? But you have I think that probably in the next 5 to 7 years, you'll see one of the most promising batches of startups coming from Portugal.
We're excited for that as well. And while Portugal is a smaller European country, that's actually a strength in some ways. There's a lot of engineering talent here, and startups like yourself, they plan for a global market much earlier than other markets, right? So obviously yourselves in Spain and Germany.
And it's again, as I mentioned before, the fact that you can in a short amount of time cover and meet the specialists that are up in the north of Portugal, and then in the same day travel all the way into the south and have those specific events. Since everything is very short, you're always like one connection away of understanding who's the person that really knows a lot about that subject, really knows a lot about that matter. And again, it's not the traction, because Portugal is not huge in that sense, but the type of validation that you can have is probably larger than what you can have in other European cities, because 1 month here will probably provide you with the tools, with the connections, with the validations that you can do to then be ready to scale into other European markets.
So lastly, do you have any words of advice for a founder moving to Portugal and starting a company here?
Well, I have tons of advices. I would probably start by saying that, obviously, since the weather and the food are amazing, and those are very important things for someone to be happy, especially working in the food tech space, those would be my first recommendations. But I think that also the culture in Portugal is more than ever, as you mentioned before, a melting pot. So we have people from all over the place. We have people from different countries. We have seasoned professionals coming from so many different industries. And you can have all of that knowledge by sitting at a random conference. You can really tap into that knowledge, and that's a moment that you should be willing to participate. If you are ready to really open yourself in terms of connecting with people, making those relevant connections, also mention how your knowledge can provide and can be helpful to those solutions, because you probably already made in your own market. Those are things that the market now is very receptive to work with. So not shying away and not being closed in a specific quarter, but actually open to the city, to the country, would be my number one advice.
Number one advice, lean into what Portugal has to offer. Nuno, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Take care. I hope everyone enjoyed this interview with Nuno, who had an unconventional journey from being a translator to a CEO of a startup here in Lisbon called Degen. Until next time, you know what to do. Subscribe and follow.